do for this month, I am so lucky to have a neighbor in John Bowen. I live in Weaverville, he lives in Weaverville, so we have traveled very far to be with you today. John is a Master Gardener volunteer, and he's going to talk to us today about winter sowing. So, take it away, John.
Well, thank you, Julia. It's a two-way street. I'm pretty lucky living next door to Julia because she has two great kids and two great cats.
How are you?
Over there, just checking on things and watching what she's doing.
Occasionally we trade baked goods also.
It's a great arrangement. It's totally a great arrangement. Well, how many of you are absolutely ready for spring to start tomorrow? Okay, I was thinking winter sowing. That's like when you sow winter like it's around us now, and it has germinated in all its fullness. It's great. I love it that it's finally cold. That's kind of weird. I love it when it's finally cold. So I'm hearing all this talk about seeds. I know you guys are talking about seeds. I'm listening to you talk about seeds. You have a great collection of seeds here. You have green seed balls. So
Can you speak up just a little bit?
yeah, it's all about getting things started. So what do we do? How do we get plants coming up from seed? Well, pretty much traditionally we've done one of two things. We've either gone out in the garden and stuck them in the dirt and watered them maybe and tried to keep the squirrels and the mice out of them, the birds out of them, and hoping they come up. How many of you have ever gone out, planted a spot in the garden, and half of it comes up beautifully and half of it is a total dud? You ever do that? Why does that happen? I don't know, but it happens to me all the time. The other thing we often do is we grow them indoors. We plant them in some sort of containers, milk jugs or milk bottles or plastic trays or something. And of course the advantage there is that we get to get them germinating under controlled circumstances. The disadvantage, of course, is that we have to transplant them out and we have to give them light and warmth and baby until they're ready to get transplanted out. But pretty much those were the two choices. Either plant things out directly in the soil or plant them in a container and then transplant them out into the soil. Well, I've been doing this for a long time. Some of that, lots of this. This is me a couple of years ago. This is back when I was working on my very first garden. And as you can see, mostly I was getting ready to plant things in the soil. Well, this is what my backyard looks like right now. That picture's 2 days old. And there's about 105 there, I think. So I've been doing winter sowing now for a few years, mostly successfully. I'm really sold on the process. I keep collecting milk jug after milk jug after milk jug. I threw some wire screen on there just to keep the leaves from falling in and covering it all up. And that's just whatever. So here's the process, basically, that we're talking about, this winter sowing process. You plant some seeds in a container. This is one that's I sort of put together. It's a milk jug. Milk jugs are the perfect container. They're classic. So we're going to talk about classic winter sowing. If you go online or you get experience with this, you can find all kinds of variations. You can do it in a baggie. You can do it in a vegetable tray. You can just do all kinds of things. But I'm talking about the simplest, most straightforward classic. So you have a milk jug like this, and it's got soil in the bottom. It's been cut so it would flop open. I've already taped this one shut. You plant some seeds in this thing, you set it outside, and you leave it alone. And you just wait and wait. Well, you don't leave it alone. Every couple of days you go out there like this, and you look in there. But mostly you leave it alone until the seeds germinate when they are ready to germinate. And they should know when that is, ideally. The weather has gotten weird. And so we have to be a little bit more interactive with this than we used to, say, 5 or 10 years ago. But this is the basic thing. Put some seeds in here, let them go. Then you wait a while, they'll grow in the spring. You transplant them out, and there's your garden. 3 steps. Pretty simple. Can you do that? Sure. Okay, we're done. Well, okay. One question I know you're asking, because I've heard you talk about this a little bit there, is what can we winter sow? What's suitable for this process of planting out now and waiting for it to germinate? And the answer is pretty much anything that you can grow from seed, you can winter sow. So that leads to the next big question. Is it a good idea? Do you want to? Is it going to fit how you garden? Is it going to fit your facility? Is it going to fit the the work you want to do. So let's go through some steps here. Do you want to winter sow? Well, I'm going to divide the world into two parts for us here. I think it'll make a lot more sense. Over here, we're going to put all of you people who just grow warm season vegetables. Tomatoes, peppers, corn, okra, beans. You have some people that are just vegetable growers. Who are my vegetable people? One or two of you. Okay, over here, where there's less room, we're going to crowd you in. These of you who are growing perennials. Wildflowers, native perennials, maybe even annuals that self-seed quite readily. Or short-lived perennials. It might live a year or two, and then they self-seed. These are the guys, these are the plants that are cold hardy for us. These are the plants that might be seeding themselves here in this climate without our intervention. Over here are the warm season stuff that's not cold hardy for us, that needs our attention. And much of what you read about winter sowing is aimed at this group of the warm season plants. Your handout has on the last part of it there a really cool graphical presentation on winter sowing. It was put together by Cheryl Mann, all but the first page, put together by Cheryl Mann. She is the master of a Facebook group called Winter Sowing Vegetables with Cheryl Mann. She's very much about growing these warm season crops. So what you see there is really aimed at that. There is another site out there, it's also a really good Facebook site called Winter Sowing, and it's curated or moderated by Valerie Alt. Valerie Alt is extremely knowledgeable about winter sowing, and she is a winter sowing Nazi. By that I mean, if you sow in November, she will say, it's not winter yet. If you want to wait until March to sow your tomatoes, your warm season plants like the one to recommend, she'll say, that's not winter sowing. So take her with a grain of salt as you do everything online. But she's really good about dealing with the perennial type things as opposed to these warm season type things. So here's kind of the difference. For the hardy plants, the perennial type things or the cold full season annuals like the broccoli and onions, things like that, the old rule used to be, really it's probably you plant them in December. The winter solstice is the traditional day for planting. And there's a couple of reasons for that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But they generally will germinate then in April, March, February, right in there. They'll germinate in the early spring. You have to kind of watch them. If it gets too cold, you throw a blanket over them just to give them some stability. But they're remarkably tough out there. And then in the early spring, you pot them up or transplant them, whatever you need to do. And that's for those hardy plants over here, for you on this side of the room. Those of you over here that are doing the sort of tender stuff, we're going to backtrack now. We're going to say our winter weather has gotten so weird, we don't even want you to plant till February or March. Because we've had the experience of planting those in December and having them germinate in January on a warm week. And then you've really got to babysit them like crazy, and it takes all the simplicity out of this. It makes it just as hard as growing them indoors. And so we recommend waiting. They're not going to come up until March or April, so there's no reason for them to be out there waiting for you. So if it's something like tomatoes, peppers, plant them late. They'll still come up, they'll still be fine, they'll still look just the same, they'll just be less trouble for you. There you have to be a little bit more careful. If it's going to be a light frost, say a little bit less than 30 degrees, you might want to throw a blanket over it. If you have tomatoes out there and it's going to be 25, you might want to bring them in the garage, in the house, for a really short time. Don't move them in and out a lot, because again, they're extremely stable. This is it's like a little mini greenhouse. If they've gotten sunlight, the soil's gotten warm, this cover provides a lot of temperature stability. And it's amazing. I've had tomatoes out there at 25. You look in there and they look horrible. They're all the way frozen tomatoes look. They survive, they grow, they bear, they work. So they're tough. This is a way of getting tough plants. They don't want to be babied, but there's a limit as to how tough even a tomato is going to be. Does that make sense?
Did you cover last night?
I covered yesterday, yeah. But all of mine are, I don't have any warm season vegetables out there at all. All of mine are perennials, and this, okay, here's what happened to me. I had a little bit of spare time in November, so I planted about 70 jugs. And just things I was planning to grow. And then out there at the end of November, the first part of December, I saw that the columbines and the cardinal flowers have germinated. And they've been sitting out there, and I don't know what they're going to do this week, but I looked at them 2 days ago, and that little bit of cold we had, which was still cold, they're fine. I thought they'd be frozen out, but they're absolutely fine. And they live here. They're pretty tough. Now, I don't know outdoor, in the real world there, if a columbine drops its seeds, which it sheds them in like September, I don't know if those are going to germinate in November and December or not, because again, in the milk jug, it's warmer than it is out of the ground. This is like a little mini greenhouse. So I probably tricked them into germinating sooner than they would have just out there in the dirt, where they would normally be dropped in nature. But so far they're fine, and I'd be willing to bet that in a week or so when I look at them, they're going to look perfectly fine. It's amazing. Fingers crossed. And and if they don't, well, that's farming. That's farming. And what may happen, it may be that all my seeds in there didn't germinate. Possibly some of them will still germinate in the spring, even if the existing ones get frozen out, because they aren't always just perfectly even germinators. Sometimes they will be a little rat-tailed in that process. Maybe that'll work. Anyhow, the two worlds. The hardy stuff, you can plant it now, tomorrow, this afternoon. Get a cup of coffee and go plant. The tender stuff, wait till February or March. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about why you might want to do this. What's the upside of doing this process? Well, one is that you can plant at your leisure. You're not trying to plant on the right day to have things mature on the right day so they can get planted out on the right day. Plant when you're ready and let the seeds worry about when to come up. Another advantage is you get to play in the dirt in January. Because you can't always do that. That's kind of fun. Your fingers just want to get in the soil and say, oh. Feels good. Okay. Next thing is that all of this is outside. There are no lights. There are no heaters. So if you don't have space, if you don't have lights, if you don't have heaters, if you've grown spindly seedlings, this is a way to get around that problem. Another advantage here is that a lot of our wildflower plants, our perennials especially, need stratification. You guys know about stratification? You can see some yeses and some nos. Put yourself in the place of a nice perennial plant. Let's pick on the columbines. Let's not. They already came up. Let's pick on the black cohosh. You know black cohosh? Mm-hmm. Beautiful native woodland plant. Well, it has a challenge because it's got these seeds. Its job is to get its seeds dispersed throughout the world and cover the world with black cohosh plants. But it's got to get these things mature in the fall and get rid of them and get them out into the world. And the longer it holds them on the plant, the more likely there is for something bad to happen. So it's got to mature them and get them out at the right time. And then either they fall on the ground or somebody comes by and eats them. Well, if they fall on the ground and it's in September, you don't want them to germinate because if they're little baby seedlings, they may very well freeze out over the winter. So you want them to wait until spring to germinate, but you've already shed them on the ground. So how do you control these guys as a plant? What are you going to do to make sure they don't germinate too soon? And plants have evolved all sorts of processes to do this. Why one works better than another, I don't know. But the idea of stratification is that the seeds biochemically require a cold period before the germination system gets turned on. And so we have the most common way, the way we usually talk about is what we call wet stratification. They have to be cold and they have to be wet, like they would be out there right now. In the ground, ready to germinate, just cold and wet, waiting 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. Different plants are different. Things you read about the plants are different. I think it depends on a lot of factors. It's not simple, but it takes a little while cold. in order to break that dormancy and let them germinate. Well, there's also a process called dry stratification, where you just throw them in the refrigerator or throw them in the freezer, and they don't have to be wet. Dry is good enough, and then they'll germinate when they get warm enough to germinate. And then there are other tricks. There are some plants, like the black cohosh, in theory at least, requires a warm, wet period, like a summer, followed by a cold, wet period, like a winter, and then it germinates the next summer. So it's a 2-year process. Okay, my winter-sown black cohosh germinate in 1 year, like a normal seed. Why? I don't know, except that I collect the seed and I throw them in little paper bags and put them in the refrigerator until December when I'm ready to plant them out. So I'm kind of dry stratifying them without intending to, and then, I don't know, it works. Anyhow, a lot of our native plants, of our perennials, require some sort of a cold period before they'll germinate. If you buy your seeds from, say, Prairie Farms, a really good supplier of native plants, they are already stratified, they are ready to go. Not all suppliers do this. If you go out and collect them yourself, you're going to have to do it. So this takes care of the stratification process because they're sitting out here in the cold. If they need it, they get it. If they don't need it, it's not going to hurt them. And if you don't know, it just covers your bases. But that's really a biggie on our perennials. I think my rule would be, assume that they are going to need it. Because it's certainly not going to hurt it if they get it. So what's another reason to do this? No bugs, no birds, nobody chomps your seeds. They're protected in the milk jugs. And lastly, they're tough. They're hardened off, they're not spindly. When you open the jugs, they're pretty much ready to go. And if they have survived this process, they might not be the most beautiful plants, but they will be the toughest plants you have ever encountered. So they're good to go. So that sounds great. I'm happy. Well, what's the problem with this? Variable winter temperatures, and more so variable winter temperatures. You have to be prepared to cover them if they start to germinate. Don't cover them unless they've germinated. So you've got to look in there and see, have they germinated?
So any little green thing is germination?
Yep. Yep. And you know, if you have a big array of them like this, it's sometimes kind of hard to see in the middle, but you got to just do what you do. You've got to be prepared to cover them, especially for those warm plants as opposed to the perennials over there. Some plants like basil, you know, yes, you can winter sow basil, but it is so cold sensitive that 40 degrees may kill it. So it's probably not worth the effort. Grow it indoors. Sometimes you have to transplant. I mean, you're always transplanting out of the jug into the garden where they're growing. That takes time, and some things can be a little challenging depending on how densely you've sown them in the milk jugs. You know, some things like carrots and beets. I have winter sown carrots. It has worked. I have transplanted them, and it's kind of a pain. Because it's very exacting not to damage that root. You've got to have the soil well prepared and have a hole there to stick it in. And you know, yeah, I can do it. And when I grow my carrots, I stick them out there. I put a board on them, cover them up just to keep them from drying out. And every now and then I lift the board when they're germinated. I take it away and try to keep the squirrels out. So sometimes it's easier with trips. But that's something you have to be aware of. If you have done this, you are going to be transplanting, for better or worse. And lastly, sometimes stuff gets too big. I grew squash one year in these milk jugs. And it germinated very nicely, and then it started trying to climb out the top, and I unfolded the thing. And the plants were like this tall and this big around, and it was too early before the last frost. I couldn't plant them out, and they were just too big to handle. So maybe that's over-successful, I don't know. But I would not do squash this way just because they got so big, and you know, they're kind of fragile, and you're breaking pieces of stem off. And so it's not the panacea for all your gardening problems, but it can be a great tool. Too many toys here. There we go. Okay. So let's go step by step. What's involved here? This is the part on your handout there. If you want to follow along there for what she's suggesting you do. she gave me permission to use that, and she told me that I dare not make any changes to it. And I respect that, she put a lot of work into it, but she and I do not always agree on this. So I'll tell you what I think, and if we're at odds, well, I'm right. Okay, containers, translucent. They don't have to be transparent. This jug is not transparent, but you look in there, you can see it lets in a lot of light. Translucent is fine. Milk jugs are the classic. Milk jugs were designed by engineers for winter sowing, and they happen to use it to sell milk. That's merely a coincidence. You can use, gallons are great, gallons are perfect. Half gallons work fine. The problem there is that you have less temperature stability, there's less thermal mass of soil, so you're going to see more rapid temperature changes, you're going to see things dry out faster in the half gallons. But if you have these, use them. I have used 1 liter beverage bottles, soda bottles. They worked. They worked. It can be like 7-Up bottles. That green works fine. Don't worry about it. As long as you get light in there, it's okay. The color's not going to make any difference. They need to be fairly tall because you've got the soil line up to, right here, the bottom of the tape. You've got to have room for the plants to grow up and still be contained within the jug in the spring. So if your containers are too shallow, there's no room for the plants to grow. So go for height. Water bottles, milk bottles, vinegar bottles, car windshield washer fluid bottles. They're all good.
The Sam's rotisserie chicken containers are very good as well.
They're tall enough, aren't
Yes.
they? Yeah, they're tall
Yes.
enough. You're speaking the voice of experience. You have like 30 of those,
Yes.
and they work. Good for you. Another thing to recognize, you remember here, when you're doing the containers, you're not using the caps.
Oh, really?
No caps. We're just using empty bottles.
Do you put drainage holes in yours?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come to that in just a moment. But the first thing is just to pick your good containers. Then the second thing is to put in drainage holes. So you've got to have holes in them, and there's a lot of ways to do it. Just a word of advice, a word of caution here. If you're going to be putting holes in them, put the holes in before you cut the jugs, because they're much more rigid. So how can you make the holes? Well, a classic way to do it is to find a Phillips screwdriver, what we call a plus. Heat it on the stove, get it hot, stick it in there, melt some holes. 8 or 10 is good. It helps to get some up on the shoulders a little bit, because if this is sitting on the ground and it gets muddy and those plug with mud, you still want to have a little bit on the side there so you can still get drainage. You can't have too many. It needs good drainage. So 10 or 12, put them on the side. This works. I have a Dremel tool. So if you look at mine here in a little while, I cut slots in mine with a Dremel. And slots work fine. It doesn't matter, you just got to have drainage. So make some holes. People use soldering irons, like the soldering iron or wood burning kits. You can even use a regular drill, that's a really narrow blade, and drill the holes in it. But you got to do something. So you're kind of on your own for that one. What follows that? Next we get to, okay, there's some pictures. These are the ones I did one time with a hot screwdriver. I circled them in red so you could see them better. So I've got them all over the bottom and up on the shoulder just a little bit. Makes sense? Got to have holes. Next trick is to cut it. And you need to leave a, cut that whatever. Okay, Julia, we're getting dirt in the library. It used to be they took my library card away from me. Okay, you need a hinge. And what I usually do on these, just as a practical matter, if it's got a label on it, if the label will come right off, if it falls off in my hand, I'll remove the label. If it won't, I just leave it, it's fine. But I make my hinge in the label area because the tape tends to stick less well on the label, and if that's the hinge, you don't need the tape there anyhow. So just a guide, put your hinge on the label spot if you can. But you need a hinge, and just so you'll be able to open it later on. And of course, while you're filling it, but once it germinates, you're going to want to open it. So you want to be able to flop the lid back, and if it gets cold again, you may close it up. You may be playing this game with it. But a hinge, I cut a couple of little slots there, and then I just use a pair of heavy scissors and around and try to cut in such a way that I actually line up on the right spot on the other side. Don't have a stair step there. I've gotten much better at my tailoring skills. Some people are such purists here that they will put a rubber band around it to make sure that they get a perfectly straight line. He says, okay. Add some soilless mix, and this is a really, really important part. You're adding soilless mix. You're not using garden dirt. And I brought in two that I really like. Happy Frog is one that many, many people swear by. And this is Happy Frog. This is potting mix. It is not seed starting mix. And that's important because seed starting mix can be too fine. It can pack down too much over winter. So we use potting mix because it's coarser. Happy Frog, a lot of people like it. It's got bark, it's got some vermiculite in it. You can come here and run your hands through it. But it looks too coarse for seeds. It's great for seeds. It works really well in the jugs. My newest favorite is the...
Where do you get that? Is that at Home Depot or?
Home Depot has it, Lowe's has it.
What's your
Yeah,
Amazon?
a lot of places. I get mine at this season up in Asheville, but a lot of places, it's widely available. Another one here, the one I've been using lately is Coast of Maine.
Oh, yeah.
And their potting soil. And again, you can look at these here. I'll leave their labels in them. This one is finer than the Happy Frog. It doesn't have the big pieces of bark. So I think on the little tiny fine seeds, I probably get better seed contact. And I like this one a lot. The thing about both of these that is really important, besides the fact that they're a little bit coarser than seed starting mix, is they should have a starter fertilizer in them. Both Happy Frog and the Coast of Maine have some kind of an organic fertilizer. Because these guys are going to be in these jugs for a long time. And you don't want to be adding fertilizer yourself because it's really easy to burn the little tiny seedling roots. If you were growing them indoors, in containers indoors, when they get, say, their second true leaf, you would start to very gently fertilize them if they weren't in a fertilized media. Well, these guys are going to be well past their second true leaf before you're ready to plant them out. They are going to need some sort of fertility, and it's just a lot better if it's already in the soil. So find something that has fertilizer in the soil.
What strength of fertilizer?
In the soil?
Yeah, to add to it.
Whatever they
I
have in
mean,
there.
what NPK are we looking
It's just a
for?
blend. It's just it would be, this would be equivalent to I don't know, because this one, Coast of Maine has compost, it has lobster tails, it has all kinds of stuff in it. So if I were fertilizing it with an add-in fertilizer, it would be just a balance, like a 5-5-5,
I see, okay.
something balanced.
Okay.
Many people use Miracle-Gro fertilizer. As a master gardener, I am not allowed to make strong recommendations about brands. I just say that Happy Frog and Coast of Maine have been used really successfully by a lot of winter sowers. Miracle-Gro gets a lot of complaints from a lot of winter sowers. I just say that. That's what I hear out there from many people. They don't like the product. It's not consistent. They get extra mold on it.
Not organic. Right, it's just chemical.
It's not organic. It is cheap. And in years past, I've used it for years and years and years as seed starting soil. I have stopped. I will not use it again.
My mom likes bone meal. Do you ever use that?
Bone meal?
Bone meal?
For seed starting?
As a fertilizer?
Yeah.
Bone meal as a fertilizer. Bone meal is actually a pretty good fertilizer, except here's what's happened to bone meal. Old gardeners like me used to use it in our youth. It's ground up, dried up bones. Well, it used to be that the butchering process to make the bones coming out of cows and stuff like that was not very effective, and so when the bone meal was dried up and ground up, it had a fair bit of collagen, meat products, cow parts in it, and so you got a fair bit of nitrogen in your bone meal because of this meat product that was in the bone meal. They have gotten much more efficient at stripping every little last bit of meat off of those bones and sending it off to the pet food makers or whatever. So modern bone meal doesn't have the nutritional quality that old-fashioned bone meal did years and years and years ago. It is a great source of phosphorus, but it takes forever to break down. So if you are using it in a situation like this, these guys need stuff that's readily available. They need it now. So bone meal would be my choice. Organic fertilizer, Fish Emulsion is even pushing it. If you look at the curves on availability, a lot of the organic fertilizers that we put on aren't available for like 6 months because they have to break down by bacterial action. Well, there's not a lot of bacteria in here to be breaking them down because it's not garden soil. It's peat and coconut coir and stuff like that. So they're great long term, but in terms of keeping things going short term, you got to be really careful with what you do with the organic fertilizers. But these guys, if you get the ones that already have it in, they're designing those to be used as potting soil, not as that. It always works great. I've not ever had any problem. I've never had to add any supplemental fertilizer using Happy Frog or Coast of Maine.
Do either of these have vermiculite in each one, or is it just fertilizer?
I don't think they use vermiculite. It's a different product, and most potting soil will not have it. It can be great, but the problem with it is it's really water retentive.
Right.
And it can make these things too wet.
They
I
can
use
have
it-
some worm castings too.
Worm castings are often in here, yeah. If you do worm castings, you're getting all the little stories, which is the best part, right? If you do worm castings, speaking as a voice of experience here, I had big bins for doing all my worms in the basement and all the household scraps went in there and stuff. And I started taking some of my regular non-fertilized soil like Pro Mix I use a lot, which has no added fertilizer, mixing it with the worm castings and then using it for some of the winter sowing because I had the Pro Mix and I had the worm castings. Well, the problem with that is that my worm castings, being kitchen scraps, had a lot of seeds in them. And they germinated out there in my winter sowing jugs. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, something's coming up. It ain't what I planted, and who is it, So a caution, usually if you're getting a mix that has worm castings in it, they don't have that problem, or they've sterilized it. But if you're using your own, just be sure that you may be adding something to it that you don't expect.
It's always a nice surprise too.
It's always a nice surprise, yeah. Well, the other thing that can happen is sometimes you'll get wind-borne seed fall in there. And things will come up and say, how'd that get in there? You have 3 or 4 plants, and maybe your seeds didn't germinate at all. You have 3 or 4 of something, and you realize, okay, it's that little yellow roadside composite daisy thing. I don't want it. How did it get in there? Well, probably wind-borne. Okay, we're going to add some soilless mix. We're going to sow some seeds. And here's the trick there. Ignore the seed packet. You're going to sow them fairly shallow, not as deep as the seed packet suggests. And the question is always, what density of seed do you want to put in there? And the answer is, it so totally depends. If you're doing tomatoes, you're on your warm spot people. If you're doing tomatoes, if you put 6 seeds in a gallon, that's fine. You're going to get 6 nice-sized plants. You can split them apart without doing any damage, and you're great. When I do onions, I put about 40 seeds in one of those jugs. Because onions, I bare root them as I'm planting them. So I don't care. I take them down just totally bare root, dig a little trench, and stick them in. So I might as well just plant them really super dense. So you have to ask yourself, in terms of how many seeds, the question is, how are you going to separate those seedlings when you're ready to plant them out? We're going to see in a minute here that there's two ways in the world. There's the way that says, I want separate plants. So I need to have them sparse enough that I can grab a clump of soil and have my plants come with it and get like my tomatoes. 6 is plenty. But if I'm doing columbines or something like that, I use what's called the hunk of seedling method. You got this thing, it's just, covered with 30 or 40 or 50 little columbine plants there. I kind of chunk it. I chunk out a piece of it, and it's got maybe 6 plants. I just plant them all together and let nature sort it out. It's fine. If I know they can be bare-rooted, and they don't mind being bare-rooted, sometimes I will actually separate them out into individual plants. It depends on how valuable they are to me. Or often I'll put them in from here into 4-inch pots, and they're going to go into gallons, and they're going to go somewhere else. I'll maybe try to set it up so I get 2 in a 4-inch pot, because 2 makes a nice clump where 10 or 12 doesn't. So it kind of depends. You can go online. You can go onto either one of the 2 Facebook pages there I recommended. You can find a table like this, and it tells you what they recommend in terms of the number of seeds per gallon, number of seeds per half gallon. Take it with a giant grain of salt. On the perennials, I plant a lot. And they can be separated, or I plant clumps of them, that's fine. Usually I have more seed than I can plant. And occasionally I've got something, I got my little Indian pinks, my Spelgelia marilandica. I only have maybe 60 seeds, and every one of those is valuable to me. So there, I will plant 9 in a jug, because I do not want to lose a plant. I'm not going to clump and seedling those because they're too hard to come by. Not a simple question, not a simple answer. Okay, a trick, an important trick, a label inside the jug, because anything you write on the outside of the jug is not going to be there in the spring. Now, one thing, the way you get around it, sometimes a new trick people have done, they put a piece of duct tape or something on the bottom of the jug and label it on the bottom, and that seems to survive okay. But stick a label inside. It's just really, really, really helpful. And popsicle stick, I use these plastic guys, and something inside. Oops, I keep hitting the button there that I'll come and hit. I'm sorry. Then you're going to tape them up. You cut them, you planted them, they're ready to go. The soil in here would be wet already because it's dry. I don't want to make a mess, but this is dry. Now, close it up. Because it's messy, I'm going to take a washcloth or something and wash the outside of this guy, and then I'm going to tape it up. Then the question is, what kind of tape do you use? Well, the classic, the standard, has been used by years and years, is plain old silver duct tape. The advantage of plain old silver duct tape is that it's really, really sticky. And as the jugs aren't always a perfectly smooth shape, it pulls the sides together, it lasts out there all season long, it's not going to fall apart out in the weather. It's going to be a pain in the butt to take off because it is so sticky. And if you use your jugs over from year to year, duct tape leaves a residue. And then the next time you put duct tape on, you've got this kind of powdery residue around where the old duct tape was, and it doesn't stick very well.
When you use your jugs over and over, do you wash them out inside?
No. Nah, I dump the stuff out. To me, jugs and pots, I never wash jugs or pots. I just let them go. There's no reason to.
They say germs are collected. You get germs.
We like bacteria.
Yeah.
We have bacteria.
Grow bacteria.
Okay, if I had something that I knew had a bad case of damping off, I might set it aside. But I've just never had that problem, so I don't worry about it. Now, the duct tape is a classic. It works really well. The jugs aren't going to fall apart. I personally no longer use it. In the handout you are told quite clearly, do not use blue painter's tape. It's all I use.
Right.
It lasts the season. It peels off with no residue. It's just perfectly good. The only downside is that when you use, especially when you reuse the jugs, depending on how you store them, sometimes the sides will get pushed in a little bit. They get a little bit dimpled. And this stuff isn't so sticky that it has a hard time pulling the sides together. But it always works out okay. There for a while I went through a period when I was using aluminum tape, which has a white, it's stuff the air conditioning people guys work. That is wonderful. But the downside is that is just more aluminum pollution in the world. And you have to cut it and you have to peel the white stuff off the back, but boy, did it work great. But now, my go-to now is just plain old blue, get the 2-inch wide, if you can, plain old blue painter's tape. Works great. Question?
Have you ever just like detached it completely and put the top over the bottom?
I have
Tried
not.
that?
There are people who do,
Yeah.
who say it's great. The other thing people will do sometimes is they'll pull them down like this. They'll poke a couple of little holes in here, and they'll use a pipe cleaner or something and stick them
Or-
together.
Or
Yeah,
twine?
people have different ways of doing it. My suggestion is, if you haven't done this before, stick with the tape, because we know it works. And part of the reason we use the tape is that we want to, I took it off now, of course, we want to seal this seam up. Because if you leave this seam open, you can get a lot more drying along the edge, you can get more air circulation, you get less of the greenhouse effect. So we want that seam closed, and we want to be able to grab the jug by the handle and pick it up and move it and look in there whenever we have to do. So you want the bottom and the top firmly attached together for the season. So I suggest stay with the tape until you've done this and it works or doesn't work for you, and then go ahead and try the variations, because they can be simpler. And if you know how to handle them and know what to expect. But I'd say it's the thing you add on in winter sowing 201.
What are your thoughts on adding the holes on the top for additional rain or snow?
In a milk jug, totally unnecessary, and it lets too much of the air out. Now, we talk about watering here in a bit. Now, if you're using the Sam's containers, you've got to put some sort of holes in there, because there's no other way to get the water in.
Right, I was talking about
Yeah, on the jugs, no. We
No?
just don't do it. We just don't need to do it. It's more work, and it lets things dry out too fast.
Got it.
Can I ask you, this young lady in front of me, yeah, you have the chicken, the broiled chicken thing?
Yes.
So does it, how tall is the top container? Like
Well,
how?
it's, the chicken's in that black pan, the black plastic, and that's enough. So I fill my dirt right to that line.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got the dome lid.
And that's about what?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah,
So, because they usually say about 4 inches.
and it
What you
clips all
plan.
together, so.
I use duct tape and
Oh,
go.
you do?
And I use an X-Acto knife, so I don't use the scissors, so it cuts right out.
But it has 2 pieces?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't really have a hinge, but when I open it,
It
I'll
sounds
just,
perfect.
I won't cut around all the way. I'll leave it, that tape there intact, so I make my own hinge.
I don't like that idea.
Yeah.
I mean, in the
That
milk
works.
jugs, I've done well, but I've always been told to add, like, I do 4 drainage holes on the top, 4 rain holes.
Interesting.
You've never needed to?
I've never needed to, and everything that I have read by the people that are really promoting this and giving all their instructions say do not do that.
Wow, okay. I have to
Do you,
look
Amy?
into that.
Interesting.
You do too? Amy does.
Oh, stop.
She's American version too.
Do you put holes in it? You do?
In the top?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just 4. Bing, bing, bing.
That's 4, exactly. And if they said, I've been told it just, whether it's rain or snow, it's just another source of
Yeah.
moisture.
Yeah, I can see that, and the good thing is there's no absolute right way. Yeah.
Whatever works.
I also don't take my caps off until they germinate. Because if
Really?
you leave the
Really?
cap on, it traps all the moisture that you put in there.
Yeah.
Initially, it traps the moisture in there, so you don't have to
Yeah.
count on rain or snow. And once they germinate, then I take them off so the air and then rain can get in.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people's experience is that they actually can overheat on a good sunny day.
Wow.
You put your finger in there with the cap on, and you feel it's, a lot warmer than the surrounding air. And I think it may run the risk, especially in the spring, of overheating.
Ah.
So just be careful. Anyhow, somehow, if you're going to do the classic method, you're going to close it up with tape. You're going to set it outside in the sun and where it can get rained on, not up against the house under the eaves, because it's going to depend on that rain for a lot of its watering. So put it out there in a spot that's going to be safe. You may need to water it. It just depends on the year. Most of the time, I find in the early spring, I have to go out there with my hose and the really, really fine setting on it just stick the nozzle on the top and just go and give it a little shot. You can tell by the weight. If you see condensation on the inside, you're probably fine. But you're not going to have to water it all winter. It's just going to be winter when it starts getting warmed up. If your soil's wet to start with, be sure your soil is wet going in.
I have a really intense sun that comes, so I'm kind of concerned if I put it directly in the sun, that it might that it might grow too quickly or take off too fast, or, I mean, it's intense, like, it's 56 degrees even on 30-degree days. Like,
Wow.
so it's like
Yeah.
really warm.
Well, yeah.
So I'm just saying, I don't want to burn them all like
Yeah,
at the very
yeah.
beginning.
Well, that's
So
the
should I
point.
keep them like in a shady spot? Will they still do okay?
Well, you want to, yeah. It's a good trade-off. That's really, really hot. But in a shade, you want the sun because the sun is providing the warmth
Right.
to get them to germinate in the spring. Otherwise, they're not going to germinate.
Right.
Take tomatoes. You want them to germinate in March.
Right.
And if you have them just in the shade, they may not germinate till May.
Okay.
So you've got to have the sun to give them extra warmth. But if your sun's so bright in that spot that it's too bright or
Yeah.
too hot,
Yeah.
then I think your biggest problem would be in the spring when they've already germinated. Then you've got to be careful that they don't overheat.
That's what I was concerned
Yeah.
about.
I have.
So maybe move them.
Yeah, move
Yeah.
them.
And
Maybe
I mean,
move them.
Maybe move 'em.
Okay.
Yes.
But I've also heard people who have used those big beach umbrellas,
Mm.
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
secured it somehow, but it's high enough so they're
Yeah.
still getting sun.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I just don't want to burn them all up.
Or you can even get a piece of light shade cloth
Okay.
and throw shade cloth over it if you're really concerned about that
Okay. Thank you.
in the early spring. Yeah, obviously there's nuances here. It's not just a cut and dried sort of thing. If you do water them gently from the top. You don't want, the risk is when you're watering them is that if your spray's too hard, you can wash the seeds out to the edges of the jug. And often when I open mine, I see that I have more along the edge than I do in the middle. Ideally, you bottom water them. Stick them in a pan of water and let them soak up water. But if you have 100 of them, you may have something else to do, like eating sleep. It's both overrated, but you still may want to do that. Okay, after they germinate, you start watching the weather. And if you have to put a blanket over them or something, you do so. But they are hardier than you think.
Did that say 60 degrees?
If
there?
they're above 60 degrees, you probably want to flip the jugs open. If they're in the sun and they're above 60 degrees, then they can overheat.
Okay.
I've confused you.
No, I'm just reading the teams last night. I look
Yeah.
forward to 60 degrees.
Well, in the spring, if they've germinated, they can get hot in there. And if it's too hot, then you're going to want to open that jug, and you may want to then leave it open,
Yeah.
or play with it a little bit. You have to watch the weather. You just have to.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to the weather. And then you transplant them out. I want to show you this guy. Take a listen to this guy. He's fun.
Hey folks, welcome to the Garden Canvas.
Hearing
Today
okay?
we're going to be looking at how to
Hard to hear.
transplant winter sowing seedlings. If you've seen past videos that I've done, you've seen sow seeds and milk jugs, and today we're going to be transplanting those into the garden. So let's get started. I have Gloriosa Daisy here in this milk jug. This was sown on January the 25th, and so we're going to open this up
Thank you.
and see what it looks like inside. We have multiple seedlings, and as you can see, it's already filling out the jug here. So I also have, this is Big Blue Salvia, which is actually a summer annual. This was not sown in the wintertime. It was sown in the late winter, early spring, but this created that greenhouse effect and allowed these to grow and be protected from cold. So I'm going to be sowing both of those here. I'm going to be sowing the Big Blue Salvia in the back because this plant gets anywhere from 36 to 48 inches in height. And Gloriosa Daisy will go in the front. That's going to give us a purple and a yellow warm color in front of the purple. So let's go ahead and get these started. So the first thing I want to do is loosen up the container so that the root ball slides out. This container is a little bit more tapered, but as you can see, it's starting to loosen up and come out of the container. If you had any trouble with whatever container you chose, you can actually cut your container and get the root ball out. You can see the root mass that this has formed. Again, this is a little less mature. We've got one big clump with several plants, and we're going to be breaking these apart and using these in other places in the garden. Now I'm going to take out the Gloriosa daisies. And as you can see here, the root mass is much more mature. We've got a lot of roots here. And so what we're going to do is just gently break these up in what we call the hunk of seedlings method. We're not going to try to break every little seedling into separate plants, but just more in hunks. And what I do is I use my thumbs to begin massaging that root ball apart. And this is a pretty tight root mass in this one. And it's okay if you stress a few of the seedlings out because this is pretty crowded. And so if some seedlings die off, that's fine. We're not worried about that because we're going to have enough to survive and spread. And so I'm just going to gently pull that apart, just like that. All right, so I'm going to break these up just gently, and I have 2 plants here. Again, I'm going to break that apart gently with my thumbs. And so we've got a good root system there with both of those plants.
That's it.
You find that's your experience normally?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They really have tremendous root systems, and you can, depending on how big you let them get, I'm usually going, because of what I'm growing, I'm usually going from the milk jug into 4-inch pots. Most of the time I'm not going from the milk jug directly into the ground. So I want little smaller clumps than that. I transplant them a little bit sooner into the 4-inch pot because usually they're going into gallons, then they're leaving my yard. They're going to a new home, someplace where they'll be happier. But that was a good example of how you can as large or small a clump as you want. It really depends on how densely you planted and what they're going to do in the garden. Most of the time, a clump of seedlings is fine. And if you have plenty of seed, don't be afraid to oversow and just say, oh, I'm going to clump it. Don't worry about it. It's good. That's the bottom line. You can do this. And to help you out, it's not very much help because I don't have very much of that. I did bring in a sack of the last collection of jugs that I have. And so if you want a few jugs, there's some in here. You're welcome to take them. I know a lot of us don't have access to gallons. Although now with all the water that's been put out for posting a lien, you may find that there are a lot more gallons out there that are available.
Last year, when I came to this class, and I had never done it before, I just put it out there on next door, just saying I was going to winter sow, and does anybody have any? And like within less than 24 hours, I had some lady. She would still text me. I've got some more. Do you want some more? I'm like, no, 15 is enough for me to start. Thank you.
Well, keep in mind, you can put it on our page too, if anybody needs it,
Yeah.
because I need some.
Anybody's got a CPAP machine, they're gonna go through a gallon of water a week.
Yeah.
So we get gallons and gallons and
Yeah.
gallons.
This
Oh, speaking of that,
There he is.
We came in just at the right time, we're just talking about access to milk jugs. Hi.
Yeah.
I promised somebody I was gonna bring milk.
There we go.
So you're welcome. You're welcome to what I have here.
Some Starbucks also holds on to them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're out there. They just have to let people know that you want them, or be creative and make up.
Sam's rotisserie
And eat lots of rotisserie chickens.
Do they over mold and,
Pardon?
do they get mold in them?
Often they get some algae,
Okay.
on green algae on the surface. Doesn't seem to hurt anything.
Okay.
And as soon as it warms up, it usually kind of goes away, and the plants just grow right through it.
Okay.
So don't worry about it. Good question, but yeah, you do see that. And first you see the green in there, you say, oh look, they've all germinated, Oh, it's algae. Other questions?
So, in this picture, for instance, the one up in the right-hand corner, those are too small to transplant.
They are. I
Yeah.
like to wait till they get like their,
Somewhere in
that's
between.
called a legionary leaf, at least their second true leaf. So that would have, this is the one that came out of the seed coat. So mine, when I transplant them, they're often an inch or taller. It just depends on the plant.
Yeah.
I want them to be durable enough to survive transplanting. But especially one like this, if I was trying to separate those into individual plants, I don't want them grown together too much, or it's just too hard to separate the roots. So it's kind of a delicate thing, and it needs to be a warm day when I have time to sit there with a wheelbarrow of potting soil. But yeah, this is too small. This back here is actually not a bad size. These aren't bad, it's just they're gonna be more grown together.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry if you weren't pushing.
And you wait until, I mean, they say after Mother's Day, or at least when I was in New Jersey, it was always wait till after Mother's Day.
For putting
For-
things like tomatoes out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or,
You'll
what's
see
your
on our
rule of
page-
thumb?
Excuse me, you'll see on our page, are you on our page?
No, this is my first time.
Okay, well, so we're on Facebook, and you'll see people just every week start saying, are you doing it? Are you doing it? So if you come on our page,
Yeah.
all of us continue, and we have a lot of master gardeners on our page.
And I think the rule is every year, Mother's Day is the average last frost date, and 20% of the time, we go after that. You kind of watch the weather, you're anxious to get it out there. A question you might want to ask yourself is, if I do plant them out too early, and we do get an unusual late frost, do I have a way to protect them? You know, can I go out and stick gallon pots on top of them? Can I do something that will protect them for that frost? So that's the risk that you take.
This is So True's planting guide. So True Seed is a local seed company for those of y'all who don't know. And it has soil temperatures on it, which is not by date, but I do remember Rachel Merriweather, who's our horticultural instructor, she said, if you're gonna buy one garden gadget, a soil thermometer is helpful. So then you have kind of an accurate measure of when seeds will be happy. It's not how I do it. I just throw it in the dirt and see what happens. But, you know, if you were following, you know, science, then we have these in print over here. And if you take them all, I can make copies.
Yeah, thank you, that's great.
Yeah.
Yep, and we don't pay enough attention to soil temperature. That's really the guide. You don't want to get tomatoes out before the soil is warmed up to an appropriate temperature. But you still have to watch for the frost, which is kind of a separate problem. The way the old farmers used to do it, Julia. They'd go out in the field and they'd drop their trousers and they'd sit in the dirt. And if it was comfortable, it was time to plant.
That's one other way to do it. My garden is in the front yard, next to John's house.
My garden's in the backyard. Okay, you have a question.
How much sun, you say sunny spot, so the way the sun goes in my yard, it gets to the, if I stick these in the back so my neighbors don't complain, how much sun, 8 hours, 6 hours?
Oh.
I mean, how much are they gonna?
4 or 5 is plenty.
Okay, okay.
Again, you're not after so much the light to grow as you are the temperature to get things
Okay.
things germinating. Mine are against a back fence, and they're actually under an oak tree, which of course lost all its leaves, and they probably get 8 hours, but it's going through oak branches,
Yeah,
so it's kind of filtered. But
Okay.
4 or 5 is good.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question. So what I have access to are a whole bunch of spinach bins that are about like those long ones. That's not tall enough to get the greenhouse effect, or?
What are spinach bins?
Like when you buy spinach at the grocery store.
Yeah, they look like those long tall.
Like
they're
a
Okay,
rotisserie.
and they're about this tall.
Well, they're taller than that.
Okay. If they're that tall.
There are the little ones, but we have a bunch of the, we might on spinach.
Well, a good rule is that you're going to want to have, say, 2.5 inches of soil, and then you're going to want to have maybe at least 3 inches or 4 inches of head space above that. There's a problem often on the relatively flat things is you end up skimping on the soil to leave the head space, and you need room there for those two things. First, you need room for those roots to grow into that soil, and also that soil is providing temperature stability. So if it's too thin, then they're likely to change temperature much more rapidly, so you're going to be more likely to get cold damage. So you want the soil itself is wet, and it acts like a thermal block that keeps things, once the sun's hit it, it keeps it warm overnight.
So I can put them on their side, on their end.
You could, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Take them.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. We buy spinach that way. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but remember, that's the reason to go. A good chunk of soil, a good chunk of head space. Okay.
Can I ask how many people have sowed already?
Some.
Too early.
I planted.
5 of you? Julia, have you?
Heck no, man.
The nursery, literally the nursery I went to here said, he's like, you can plant till the end of December. He literally said, drop it in the ground. He said, it'll come back, I promise. And I put it in, I'm thinking this guy's whack. No, they look great. I don't even,
What
What
are
did
they?
you
you
plant?
know, like sedges and stuff, like he's just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
just drop them in. He's like,
Yeah.
don't even worry about it. Here,
Yeah.
don't even worry about it. I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean at all? That's,
Nope,
no,
nope.
it's happy.
That's the way they grow out there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, no,
I'm happy. I'm gonna have like all kinds of funny green things.
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How many are here for the first time?
Yay!
Oh.
Thank you, welcome.
Yeah, good for you.
We do this every month and we get more and more people and we share more and more garden secrets.
Yeah. And it's really about what's worked for somebody, what hasn't, what your experience has been in gardening. There aren't any absolute right ways or wrong ways. There's just some ways work better for some people and some ways work better for other people.
And stuff.
And mostly you try stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm getting on, and I think, okay, I've got a lot of experiments I need to do. I'm saying, hey, often my gardeners say, hey, I'm 73 years old, and this is the first time in my life I have ever tried to do this in the garden. I think, wow, projects, years, but try stuff.